Welcome to the Escarpment. This is my model railway HO build channel and I'm your host Jason. Today's video, as promised, there was a number of people that reached out and wanted to know how I do the wiring from the back end of the control panels out to each of the point motors. You see, this is one of 8 of the control panels that I have around the layout. They've all now been completed. As you can see here, the panel's intact, all the internal wiring's done. I've actually done all the external wiring to each of the point motors. Hopefully you can hear some bits and pieces there. But this video will show you what I've done underneath the layout once this control panel was in place. I'll come back at the end of the video and sort of just take you through, I guess, last video I probably went through some stuff what I'm looking at to see at the end of this year. I've got some updates to that. It's looking like there will be another video and I'll sort of talk a little bit more about that at the back end with some news. So stick around for that. But for now, let's go and have a look on how I implemented my wiring. Thought I'd just start here at the workbench just to show you some of the tools that I do use, because really for me it's all about the preparation. So we've got the labeler here. I use that to print 1 to 14 and that just represents the number of switches and point motors that I'll be wiring up for this particular branch line. So what I'll normally do is once I run the wires from the control panel out to the corresponding point motor and connect those, I'll come back, make sure I've got enough length in the wire to the distribution boards at the back, and then I'll cut it and then put the label on those wires. Another item that I use are these cable ties. They'll each start close to the corresponding point motor, and then each cross member of the framework I'll have one of these, and that's what I'm feeding the wire through out to the point motors. Point motors are labeled with the codes from the control panels. I make sure that the back of the control panels where I connect the wires to, they're also labeled 1 to 14, and also the wires that I put in are numbered. So that way there's no way to get wires crossed. It's just usually if the points are opposite to what's showing on the control board, it's just really coming back to this particular push connector and swapping the wires around. And so that's already been done. These have already been done under the layout. It's really all that preparation work I do up front. Now with the wiring, this is probably one of my main homemade tools that I do. I like to run the wires out together. So what I've done is just a plank of wood. I've got a couple of dowels that are screwed underneath, just, you know, small enough where your wire just fit over, and I've got a couple of screws here that will help fasten it to the layout. Just when I'm running wires, you know, it doesn't then jump off or, you know, do some other damage. So that's basically the items that I get prepared up front. So we're here under the level 2 branch line, and I thought just show you how I've done some of the prep work. So you can see here, this is the back of the Owen Locomotive Depot control panel. You can see here I've got the cable ties in place, and they go all the way down and around that far side. You can see that I've got the point motors and they're all been attached to the push connectors. You can see there, and there's a number of them next to all the other point motors. Every point motor has one of those. And that's basically where I sort of start off wiring here at the control panel, feed it through the corresponding cable ties, and then hook it up to the right point motor. So what I'm going to do is first get my wires in place and screwed in, and I'll usually bring it up near the end, the far end of the actual control panel. Okay, so they're all in place. And then to start with, I will run it down to the furthest point motor, which is at the start of the branch line. I start with the furthest first and then work my way back with each corresponding point motor. So really all I'm doing is taking these two wires and plugging them through the cable ties. And just to make my life easier at the other end, I'm going to just strip ends of the wire so they can just be connected directly into the push connector of that number 1 point motor. So just turn the camera around and just to show you, I guess, the feeding of the wires through the cable tie loops. Where are we? Okay. I've got to go to number 1, which is right at the beginning of this level 2 branch line. And now what I'm going to do is just with these ends, I'm going to just connect it. Actually, that's probably one thing. One other tool to have is a pair of tweezers, because it's just easier to hold this end and then feed it into these push connectors. Okay, 1. Now for the second one. So much easier using the push connectors and the screw ones. What I'm going to do is, because there's no other wire going to be put through this last cable tie, I'm going to actually just do that one up. There, and then later I'll come back and cut those. Just going to pull that, not ultra tight, but just take up the slack. The number 1's down this side. I just need to make sure I cut enough to hook it up. While those two are sitting there, I'm going to take my number 1 tag and wrap it around these 2 wires. I'm probably going to end up cutting a little bit more off. So I probably just want to take it up here. There's number 1 wire. Now at the moment, given that I've got plenty more wires to run, that will just dangle there. Leave that there for the moment, because really all I needed to do, just make sure I had enough to reach number 1 here. So I've got 11 and 13 to go. That's these two over here. I'll probably do them off camera as I pass each of these cable ties, and then there's no more to be fed through because maybe there's no more connections after it. I normally, as I go along, will not pull them really tight, but just take up the slack and then adjust the cable ties, and they're ready for trimming. I've got two left, which I'll do. Obviously, I've got each of these numbered, and I've got my distribution boards numbered underneath, so I know what goes to what. So I'll get that done off camera as well. And like I said, if the rails are the opposite to the switches, I just come back to the appropriate switch and just swap a wire around. But other than that, that's basically how I run through the wiring from the control panel to the each of the point motors. As you can see, a lot of twisting and turning. It does take its toll. But anyway, it's good. This is the last one, so full steam ahead. So that's the wiring installation behind the control panel out to the point motors. There was a number of point motors that weren't aligned correctly with what was on the control panel. So as mentioned, you know, all I needed to do was go back to those push connectors at the point motor and just swap around those two yellow wires, and then bang, it was all lined up. One hint there is if you can take away anything and use those push connectors, they're just so easy as opposed to the screw type or some other types out there. So hopefully you picked up a few techniques there that maybe you can apply to your layout, or maybe there was nothing there for you, but hopefully you found it a little bit entertaining. Now, moving forward, I think there will be another video, and it's almost going to be like a part 2 of that mistakes, oversights and OCD, but it's going to be more focused on the track. I've had a couple of lessons over the last week, especially with track testing, and I'd like to probably come back and share some of those insights and learnings that I've had, but I think I might expand it to a bit more across the whole layout. You see, this will be 6.5 years I've been building, you know, the main infrastructure of this layout. So I think what I might do as part of that, while it will concentrate on some of those lessons learnt with the track testing, there'll be a bunch of other stuff in there with just lessons learnt, you know, hindsight, all that type of stuff that, you know, you wish you could go back sometimes to certain things. Not that I've had a lot of those moments. There's been a couple, but I think that's what that next video will be. And it'll be more or less an end of year type video. So, you know, and I'll try not to make it too corny. That's where we're headed. I've got a couple, as mentioned in last video, I've got a couple of minor tasks or, you know, programs of work that I need to just touch up, tidy up. Nothing major. I'll be able to get it done over the Christmas break. And then, like I said, next year, it'll be all about the terraforming and starting to do scenic work. So I look forward to 2024 from that aspect. Until then, stay safe. I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.